Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we are diving into our 1-year anniversary tier list. So we have, what, has it been a week yet? We've had just about a week or so for the new patch, and yeah, I'm ready to jump into it. So first and foremost, we're going to be starting off with the lane tier list, then we'll jump to the jungle tier list, and I'll do my best to explain, and yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. So I just like to go down my list the way that I have it here in my template. So we're going to start with the all-rounders, and we're going to start with the Azumarill. Now, this is a really personal decision. I'm not going to lie to you, I just don't really care for this character. I don't know quite how to explain it. It just never really feels super impactful to me, and I know that this is going to be one of those ones where people instantly disagree and tell me that it should go higher, and it probably should. It's my relative experience that I don't feel it. I don't feel the impact that this character brings, even after the buffs, Aqua Tail, play rough. It just doesn't really feel like it has a crazy amount of impact. If you get fed on this character, like any character, you can kind of do well. So maybe it should be B+ tier, but I just think there's so many better options for like top lane picks or just lane picks in general that I don't really care to put this one super high up. As for Aegis Slash, I think that Aegis Slash is an incredibly strong character, but I still don't really care for this character in the laning phase. So it would probably be like A+ if it was like a little bit better. That said, it can get a lot of work done. So even dealing with some of the like early laning phase is not that bad. And yeah, still really, really strong. Dragonite. Dragonite is not the best in lane, but an incredibly impactful character. A crazy strong Pokemon. So I definitely have to put it like on the list for being strong, but I don't want to put it too high because the laning phase is just not that great. Dratini is just not the best and has a little bit of a hard time securing farm, but it's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world. As for Serena, and I think I'll just go ahead and rip the band-aid off. I think Serena, I've been kind of floating Lucario around A+ tier, but it's kind of hovering still the S tier area. But Serena and Machamp are the specific ones I think are just incredibly strong for the laning phase. So like I said, Lucario, I've been hovering it around A+ to S tier, but these three are like the lane all-rounders, right? When you see one of these in your game, you know that they're going to be popping off. You know that they're going to be doing a lot of damage. And yeah, they're hard to deal with in the laning phase, out of the laning phase, during the mid to late game. They scale well. They just are incredibly strong. So yeah, incredibly strong. As for Garchomp, not the strongest laner in the world. I think that Garchomp is a lot better feeling recently, and maybe that's just emblems, maybe it's just placebo because I want to play the character and I miss the character a little bit, but we know Garchomp's not the best. It's still struggling quite a bit, and it's definitely not the best in the laning phase, in my opinion. So unfortunately it's chilling down here. And Charizard, you know, Charizard scales well, but if you put it in the lane, you just like can't do anything. It is so incredibly hard to get farm in this character, to get ahead, to get a Unite move, and this character does really, really well whenever it's ahead, and it can kind of snowball a game and take over a game, but not so much on its own. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. All right, moving into the attackers, we have our newest attacker, Glaceon, and I think that Glaceon is strong, but it doesn't feel like the best laner in the world to me. It's okay in lane, right? It can get some farm, it can do okay, and then it scales really, really well. Glaceon's very strong in my opinion, but I don't want to put it too high because I think that it just feels okay in the laner phase. As for Delphox, however, I think Delphox is very, very strong. Delphox is incredible right now. The full CDR build, yeah, Delphox was already great. I think that it's a net positive this whole patch. I think that Delphox is doing better and is in a really, really good spot. Espeon, this character just leaves something to be desired. I don't know what else to say. Maybe this is too low for it, but I'm never excited to have an Espeon on my team. And they pop off from time to time. They have some big burst moments, but man, they're just so frail, and a lot of the time I would rather just have an all-rounder or like another attacker in their place. So Espeon doesn't excite me too much. The laning phase, surprisingly for Espeon, is pretty good. Like, it's not that I think Espeon is just bad at laning, it's that I don't think Espeon is a very good character almost at all. And it's kind of the same thing with Azumarill. Like, Azumarill should technically, as far as being a laner, should probably be higher. I just don't really respect or care for the character that much on my team. I don't think that they provide a ton. And again, these two are probably going to be a little controversial. They could probably both be in B+ tier. I just never get excited to see one of them in my game, like ever. Yeah. And neither is Duraludon. Like, I don't know. Duraludon, there's something about this character that just, even in jungle, I just almost always feel like this character feels a little bit useless. And it's struggling, but it kind of does some damage. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. I don't think Duraludon is super great. Sylveon, however, is still very strong. The early laning phase is really, really rough, but once you get past Eevee and you become Sylveon, this character can kind of just take over. Hyper Voice is still incredibly strong, and yeah, definitely don't want to sleep on Sylveon. Really good secure rip potential, and good potential to fight and do some damage. Ninetales is a lane queen, doesn't scale super well. It's funny, the EVs I think are... Here, I'm going to throw another pick up here. Hold on. Let's throw Pikachu up here. Ninetales Pikachu are the laners that are really, really strong, and then they don't scale super well in the late game. The EVs right here are the two laners that aren't the best. Like, they're okay at lane, and then they scale really, really well. So it's this weird dynamic, but I feel like they're all around the same tier because they're both strong for different reasons. And Ninetales and Pikachu aren't entirely useless in the end game or like an end game fight. I just don't think that they're as good as the evolutions here. So these 4 lane attackers, they all feel incredibly strong and solid to me. I've actually bumped Ninetales and Pikachu down to make room for some of the other lane attackers that I think are still performing really, really well. And yeah, we'll go ahead and move on. So Greninja, I think that Greninja is a terrible laner. I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the way. I think Cinderace is a terrible laner. Whether or not one of them is better than the other, these 3 characters are good characters that just do not need to be played in lane. You're just putting yourself at a deficit, and they do scale really well. So like, if you had an okay lane, you can make it work. Like, that's the thing. You can make it work. You just shouldn't be forcing it to. It's not very good. And again, same thing with Cram. CDR Cram is just taking over the game. It's really, really strong. I think that Cram's laning phase was always one of its better pieces. And here we are back with Cram performing very, very well. So that's always cool. Venusaur. I'm actually putting Venusaur at A+ tier because I think that this character actually survives and does really, really well. It is probably like a more like a evolution kind of scaling. Like, it isn't the best in the early lane, but it's not that bad. And then as far as scaling into the late game for actual team fights, it does pretty well. So I think that it's actually doing pretty well. I think that it's in a solid position. So yeah. And unfortunately for Gardevoir, I think that this character like can't lane at all. Scales super well in the late game, but you should not be wanting to lane this character. Decidueye is not the worst laner I've ever seen, but I just don't see a lot of value in Decidueye even still. The character is just super, super frail and easy to kill, and I'd rather just have something else in its place. All right, let's move into the defenders. So for the defenders, I have Trevenant. I think this character is insane. You can play damage, you can play tanky. Really, really strong laner. Mamoswine, and this is where I start to fill in the B tier a little bit. There are some B tier tanks that are good, but they're not the best picks in the world, but they lane really, really well. And so we're going to go ahead and put Mamoswine, Crustle, and Blastoise in this section. I actually think that they're decent to have on a team. They don't necessarily all have amazing laning phases, but they're like decent Pokemon. Crustle is pretty decent as far as like the bigger picture. Blastoise pretty decent as far as the bigger picture. Blastoise has a pretty bad laning phase. Crustle and Mamo have pretty decent laning phases. So yeah, there's that. And then of course, Greedent. Greedent is incredibly strong, probably one of the best Pokemon for solo queue. I'm even been considering putting it S tier, but I'm gonna leave it here for now. And sadly, we have Snorlax. Snorlax, actually really, really strong laner, just terrible late game scaling. Does like nothing in team fights. It brings good CC to the table, but then you have like a Unite move that doesn't feel very strong. And Slowbro. Slowbro is really, really strong. You can do Mage build, you can be full tanky, Surf, Scald, doesn't matter. Slowbro is pick. Slowbro's the pick there. All right, laning Talonflame is terrible. Talonflame is kind of terrible right now, so we'll have to talk about that a little bit, unfortunately. But yeah, Talonflame is not the best. I just realized my screen got shifted over. Yeah, Talonflame, not the best pick right now. And lane Gengar is like not very good, but at least the Pokemon is pretty decent, but I would not suggest it. Yeah, B tier is just kind of the tier that I'm just like, I really don't ever want to see any of these characters like on my team, like rarely. I think the Zero Aura is much, much better now with the level 9 Unite, and it lanes pretty decently. It's not the best laner in the world, so maybe low of this A tier list, high of this B tier list, somewhere around here. But Zero scales super, super well, super well. And Absol, I'm floating somewhere like right here too. I think that because it's been bugged, and I think that's right, like just about to get fixed, it's feeling like around here naturally. With the bug, it would probably be a little bit lower because Night Slash just basically hasn't been working, but I think that this feels like a good position. Right. Hoopa, S tier, Blissey, S tier, incredibly strong supports, global map presence, crazy healing. You have to pretend like that's not something we can ignore. And unfortunately for Wiggly just feels like it's not really getting a lot done lately these days. But I don't actually feel like it's this bad, if I'm being honest. I feel like it's maybe like around here. Like, I'm not too terribly upset to have a Wiggly in like a solo duo trio kind of a scenario. It's still going to get some shielding and some healing done, but I don't know, floating around here somewhere. I think, yeah, I don't know, somewhere around here. Like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments. This, when you start getting to these like Pokemon that are like hardly used and they're like still good, kinda, you can always run Rollout if you really needed to. And I don't know, I think Wiggly is okay. Sadly for Mr. Mime, I'm not a huge fan of Mime. I know this is probably where someone like Chris would like hard disagree with me. I'm not a huge fan of Mime. Again, it's another one of those, like, it's somewhere right here. You can kind of do some damage and carry a game with it. It's kind of useless. I don't know, it's in a really weird spot. And Eldegoss is still solid. Maybe this is too high because it's, you know, relatively doesn't get picked nearly as much, but in solo duo queue, you can play it damage, you can play it supporty. It's pretty solid. So this is my lane version of the tier list. Like I said, things get a little weird around, you know, B plus tier, a little subjective, but A and up is super solid. You can definitely take these in the lane and you're gonna have some good games. So this should be the list that you're looking at. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the jungle side. All right, moving over to the jungle side, let's go ahead and jump into it. Same thing, whenever it comes to Azumarill, I don't see this character as like a very strong jungler. I think that it's just a Pokemon that kind of exists and does some things, but isn't completely useless, but not crazy. As for Aegis Slash, in terms of jungle, I think this Pokemon is incredibly strong, so we're going to put it really high up. It goes up a tier from the laning list because I think that jungle is much more preferential for it. And that leads us into Dragonite, which is incredibly strong in jungle right now. I think Dragonite, the secure potential is just, it's hard to ignore. You know, I don't even like playing this Pokemon that much. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but it's super strong. You can't deny that. And when you run into it in solo queue and you realize how much it controls the game and controls the pacing of the game, it's really annoying. So you kind of just have to acknowledge the fact that it exists. Serena as a jungler is like, it can get the job done, but there's always better options. So it's just very middle of the pack. And I actually am going to put a lot of Pokemon picks like this, especially with the all-rounders. There's a lot of all-rounders that are, you can get the job done in jungle. Garchomp I actually think is a pretty decent jungler right now, but the character is just not the best, right? We get the issues with Garchomp. You can win with Garchomp. You can pop off with Garchomp. But there's just better picks, relatively speaking. As for Charizard, I think I've slowly been moving this Pokemon down. It's kind of getting power crept a little bit, but it's still strong. Charizard in the jungle is still really, really good and can snowball games. As opposed to laning it, it can actually be useful, so we got to go with that. And same thing for Machamp. Like, you can jungle this Pokemon, but there's really no reason to. It's the triple laners, like Garchomp aside, these three all-rounders are so strong in lane, it just makes no sense to jungle them. As for Glaceon, Glaceon has crazy single target potential. I think it is a very, very strong jungler. A+ tier. It's level 8 Unite move. You can kind of snowball the game really, really hard with this Pokemon. And if you get the ball moving, then you're good to go. Delphox, I think, is really, really close to S tier. Really close to S tier. With the CDR build, Delphox jungle is crazy. You just come out swinging and you just keep the game moving. And yeah. I don't know what else to say. I mean, you're using Energy Amplifier, so jungling an Energy Amplifier is nice because you get level 9 faster. You can get more ults in. You have crazy CDR. You're just controlling the pace of the game, like I said. Espeon jungle, you know, like, I don't know. You probably shouldn't do it. It's not really necessary. And Duraludon jungle, it's like, it's kind of on par with other characters that probably shouldn't be in jungle just because, like, it can do it, but Duraludon's just not that strong in my opinion. So, like, you can kind of get the job done from there. Sylveon jungle is actually higher tier to me because there's, like, split jungle strategies, or you just really need to get the character moving. You can get this character going and get it closer to level 8. Again, I think Sylveon actually is strong and scales well. So, Sylveon jungle, not the worst thing I would say in the world. Not the best thing in the world. There's better options, but it's up there. It's up there. Definitely something that you could play around on. Alolan Ninetales jungle, you can do it, but there's really no reason to, so it sits pretty low. Greninja, S tier jungler. One second, let me grab my Cinderace. Cinderace, S tier jungler. The reason why I'm putting these here, and for the sake of saying Cramorant, but the reason why I'm putting the first two 80 carries here is because they just snowball games so hard. If you can get fed, you can snowball a game. I don't even think they're actually the best junglers in the game. I just think that for solo queue, I mean, even duo trio, it's you can control the game so much just by getting a little bit fed. And they're auto attackers, so their damage is free. You don't have to wait for cooldowns at all. It's just, they're so easy, man. They're so easy to play. Ranged red buff is ridiculous. they're just incredibly impactful. And Cramorant with full CDR build, I was toying with putting Delphox up here as well, but I think Cramorant with full CDR build is just crazy strong. There's so much mobility, so much damage, lots of options where, you know, you can dance around them with your abilities, you can dive directly on them, you can pop out Unite move in a good position because you have more mobility. This character feels so strong right now with full CDR build. It's really really strong. Pikachu Jungle is actually surprisingly not bad. It's probably better than most junglers in this list. It's just, there's not really much of a reason to do it. So putting Pikachu Jungle here makes no sense, but putting it right here is fine. I actually surprisingly think that Pikachu Jungle is like kind of not a meme, but it is a meme at the same time because it can lane well. Venusaur Jungle is actually not much of a meme. I don't think it's the best thing in the world to pick, but you can go Solar Beam, Petal Giga. This character scales super well. Venusaur is just really solid in terms of balance. It feels really good. So yeah, don't freak out about that if you see that in jungle. Same with Gardevoir. Gardevoir actually has a place in jungle as opposed to lane. Not the best option, but it's strong. Has a great Unite move if you can land it. And yeah, there's Gardevoir for you. And Decidueye, again, it's the same thing. I just don't think this Pokemon's very good. Decidueye, Duraludon just fall in this weird spot where I just like, I don't really value them as Pokemon, but they're decent, right? They're okay. So I don't know. I put them middle of the pack because they can kind of get the job done. It's not like you can't win with them. They're just not super impactful. So yeah, Trevenant Jungle probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but it's like why, right? It's another one of those whys. I don't even know if it's this low or maybe B+ tier. I don't know. Trevenant Jungle, just like why? Why are you doing? Don't do it. Same for Mamoswine. It's another one of those like I'm putting it lower because I think Trevenant's stronger. So if you're gonna jungle these two picks, just don't, and also why. Crustal Jungle, same thing, just don't, also why. Crustal Jungle might be better than Mamoswine Jungle, but like this is getting real trivial and I'm just putting things low on the list for the sake of saying like just don't, also why, you know. Greedent Jungle I'm gonna put a little bit higher because you can do Jungle Invade, but also Greedent Jungle wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It just doesn't have a like fast early clear, and Greedent's really good with stacking items, so don't do it, but like you could do it, you know. Yeah, Snorlax has no ult. If you're jungling this character, I don't even know why. Like, playing this character is bad enough. I wouldn't do that. Slowbro Jungle is probably not the worst thing in the world because you can do like full mage build. But again, same thing. You don't really need to, so I'm not going to put it that high up. It also, like Pikachu and maybe like Greedent, is better than most other junglers in this list, but just why? There's not really a necessity for it. And Blastoise Jungle, surprisingly, I think I'm going to put higher because I think, viably speaking, it's probably better than most of these other junglers. Blastoise doesn't much have a position in lane, and it still does pretty good. I think Blastoise still does some pretty good damage. It just brings that, like, it's basically like an SP all-rounder. So, not the best jungler option. It's probably the lowest of A tier, but I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's terrible. As for Talonflame, I'm not gonna lie, I think Talonflame is hella falling off. I want to put it like here, but it almost kind of feels here. It just feels like the Pokemon doesn't do very much. I still think you can kind of get ahead and do well on it, so I'm gonna put it middle of the pack. It's just not the best pick anymore. But Gengar is a very strong pick. For solo queue, you can pop off as Gengar. For Zeraora, you can pop off as Zeraora. They have a lot of viability in jungle right now. And Absol, you know, Absol's floating somewhere right here. I really don't know where I want to put him. It just depends on what it feels like post bug nerf or bug fix. I'm gonna put it in A+ right now, but it could easily be working its way toward A+. So Absol still feels pretty solid. It just feels buggy, and they're about to fix that. So we'll see, right? And I know there's other bug fixes too, but we'll just see. We'll see what the result is. Hoopa Jungle, no, it doesn't make any sense. Mr. Mime Jungles, again, it's like one of those, like, you probably shouldn't do it, but I guess you could. It's not the worst thing in the world to jungle. Eldegoss Jungle is probably better than most of those picks down there. Wiggly Jungle, again, like, kind of, but not really. And then Blissey Jungle. Just don't do it. There's no real reason. So that's the jungle tier list, friends. Let me know your thoughts. That's the full tier list for the anniversary. I'm very interested to hear what you think. I know, give or take a change here or there, but ultimately, the way that I look at these tier lists is I just want them to be relative to the role, and I want it to be like the A+, and S tier are the ones that you should mostly be looking at if you just want a hard climb. You can play whatever you want in this game, you really can, and get away with it and do fine. Being a good player is more important than having like an S tier Pokemon, but just for the sake of saying, this is what I'm thinking, and I'd love to know your thoughts. So friends, thank you so much for watching. Drop a like on the video, subscribe for future Pokemon Unite content. As always, be sure to be kind to one another, tell someone you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.